All right, back inside brackets, again, we've just laid out the HTML content for the website, and I want to go and start to create the CSS content to start to define how this website looks. I'm just going to extend the width of the brackets file here, and I'm going to go to a vertical split so that I can put the CSS file over here and we can see the CSS and HTML and how they correlate. So I'm going to right click on the CSS folder and I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this the style.css, and this is going to be where all our rules to help define what the HTML looks like are housed. Great. So the first thing is always when I start to create my files, I'm going to create a really simple CSS reset rule. So asterisk meaning all the rules, curly brackets, set the margin to 0, set the padding to 0, and then we're going to do the box dash sizing border box just to remove all the effects that the padding should normally have on different boxes. All right, so now I've got my reset rule. I've just redefined everything in the page, removed all the margin, removed all the padding from the different elements. The first rule I have in the HTML, the first div, is wrapper. So I want to make sure I do hashtag wrapper. And now I can start to define this. So the website width for this design is 1400 pixels. So I'm going to put in 1400 pixels. I do want this website to float in the middle of my web browser, so I need to add a margin. So I'm replacing the 0 margin at the top that the reset does by saying margin : 0. So I'm going to do 0 for the top and bottom and auto for the left and right. Because I've defined what the width is, it's going to automatically take care of, no matter what size the web browser is, make sure that this floats in the middle of a web browser. And those are the basic things I need to set up for the wrapper. The next rule I need to work on is the home. So underneath the wrapper is home. And it's an ID, so I do hashtag home, set the curly brackets again. And because this is a box, I know that the width is going to be 1400 pixels because it's the full width of the website. I know that this is going to have a height in it as well. And I'm unclear of the height right now, so I'm just going to put in 500 pixels as a dummy height. This is a major element box, so I'm going to have to put a float in here. Float, left, clear, both. And just to see it, I'm going to put a background color in here, and I'm going to maybe make it a light gray. All right, so the home is done. If I want to take a look at what I've got so far, I can go back to my web browser, and you can see that the home section now is here. It's in the middle of my web browser. Inside the home section is logo, nav, and key message, and I'll start to work on those before I hit the portfolio about contact and footer. So after the home CSS rule, I'm going to go to the header. And because this header doesn't have an ID or a class, it must be just a regular HTML tag, and so I can just use the word header. And again, this header is going to have the same width as the website. This is going to go across the entire website. And I'm going to have this header have a height, and again, I'm just making up numbers right now, of maybe 50 pixels. And it's another major element, so I need to add a float to it. Float left. If in doubt, it's always left. Clear, both. And have a background color of, sure, aqua. Here's what the header looks like, and if I view that in my web browser, we can start to see the header is in its place. Next, I'm going to take a look at inside the header is the logo, and it's an ID. So I'm going to do an ID or hashtag logo in the CSS, curly brackets, and I'm going to set the width up for this, and the width is going to be, maybe it's going to be 300 pixels, not nearly the full width of the website. The height, I'm going to set the height as 50 pixels just to match what's already done in the header. Because I want the logo and the navigation to float side by side, I need to make sure that I have a float of left in here. And I'm just going to add a background color so we can see what it looks like. And I'm going to choose something a little different, so maybe I'll choose blue violet. All right, and what does it look like now in the web browser? In the web browser, I can start to see, okay, there's my header. So I've got my logo, I've got my navigation here, and I need to now add my nav rule. And the nav rule will be very similar to the logo rule. So I'm simply going to copy that logo rule and paste. Change the name of the rule to be nav. And the width of it is not going to be the 300 pixels. I'm going to put it at 1000 pixels. Height I'm going to leave at 50, and I'm going to float this to the left as well, and change the color from blue violet to be a lighter purple so we can keep the purples in the header section. Save this file and take a look, and I can see that the navigation is now next to the logo, and I can see still a little bit of the header is displaying over here. I'm not as concerned because the navigation definitely isn't this long in my design, and the header I make sure is just still keeping all this area away from the key message. Great. So after the header comes my key message, and it's going to be very similar to the header, so I'm going to copy the header rule. I'm going to paste that before the nav rule, or below it, and then I'm going to say this is a key message, it's an ID, so again I need a hashtag key message. It's going to be 1400 pixels wide instead of 50 pixels. We're going to make sure that this fills up the space, so I'm going to say 450 because of the 50 pixel for the header, and float left, clear both, change the color from aqua to be, maybe I'll put this in a green so I can see what this looks like. I'm going to get rid of the word home here because that's just going to push my content down. Save that, go back into the web browser, and we can start to see the website coming into play. So I've got my home section now done, I've got my header section done, I've got the logo section done, I've got the navigation defined, I've got the key message area defined, which means I just have portfolio, about, and contact and footer left to do. All right. So as I take a look at portfolio, portfolio has kind of the same dimensions as home does, so I'm simply going to go and grab the home rule, copy that rule, and come below the key message and change now this, what I've just pasted, to be portfolio. It's going to be 1400 pixels wide, and maybe it's going to be 400 pixels tall. It again needs to float left, clear both, and the background color I'm going to change, and I'm going to say let's make this an orange like we kind of did inside InDesign. Save that now, and when I preview my website, I've got my logo, navigation, key message, portfolio, and all I need is about and contact, and they follow the exact same rules. So I'm going to highlight portfolio, copy that rule, paste below, change that to be the about, and change the color here to be a cyan kind of color. Below about is contact, so I'm simply going to copy the about rule, paste, contact, and I'm going to change the background here to be dark gray like it was in InDesign, in the initial design. So the contact now has a color as well, and when I view that in my web browser, I now have the logo, the navigation in my header area. In my home area, I've got my key message. In the portfolio, I've got that set, the about section, the contact section. All I need is my footer, and I'm simply going to copy the contact section, paste it in here. Footer doesn't have an ID or a class, so it's just simply footer in my CSS. So I'll replace hashtag contact with footer. It again is 1400 pixels wide, and probably following much like the header, change to 50 pixels tall, float left, clear both, Command E, and we'll make this a really light gray as well. All right, so those are the main content areas. Save my file, preview it in the web browser. There's my footer, there's my contact section, there's my about, my portfolio, the key message, and basically the structure of my website is done. The next step is just to start putting in all of the content that needs to be inside the HTML, and then start to define those inside my CSS. If I want to create some comments in here, I can go inside here and I can create above the portfolio section / asterisk, and I can say portfolio section up here, and then that just means that all the rules below here are going to be for my portfolio section. I can be really nice and make all these notes for every single section that I've got here inside my CSS. So I can then know where all the different rules will be hidden, or I guess not hidden, placed. Contact. And footer. Footer, contact, about, portfolio. I'm going to come up here and say this is my home section. All right, so that's the basics of my HTML and CSS. Hopefully that helps. I think I'll create one more video of just putting the background image into the home section so you guys know how to do that, and talk about centering. See you in the next video.